Someone dug out $5.3 million, $26 million, $6 million, $10 million, $600 million, and he had no idea. How rich do you have to be to burn $2 million just to keep warm? And why do you need to warm yourself by the fire if you're that rich? These are just two of the many questions surrounding Pablo Escobar and his fortune. This is the man who became the epitome of rags to riches. He went from poor farmer's son to a most wanted mob boss who made $145 million a day in cash. But what do you even do with that amount of cash? How do you keep it hidden when you've got two governments after you? Let's explore Pablo Escobar's money journey and how he hid all his money when he was already a wanted man. Pablo Emilio Escobar Gaviria was born on December 1st, 1949 in Rio Negro City in Colombia. His father was a farmer and his mother was a school teacher, but it wasn't just the three of them. Escobar grew up with 6 siblings. This wasn't unlike most Colombian families back then, but the problem was they were very poor. Desperate for cash, Pablo began a life of petty crime, stealing tombstones, sanding them, and reselling them. With that money, he got a new motorbike and went into commercial business robbery. Then, he stole cars, offered protection, and even kidnapped rich politicians for ransom money. As his crimes became more serious, his earnings piled up. The narcotics trade in Colombia was already a bustling business at the time, so it didn't take long for Escobar to join in on it.
They started to bring in, came from Peru, from Bolivia, and converting it into hydrochloride. And then from there, they had access to the Caribbean Ocean.
By the time he was 26, Escobar had amassed $3 million in cash. That's around the time when he created the infamous Medellin cartel. When Pablo started smuggling white powder into the United States, the business had a snowball effect.
As a result of that, it became the economic law of supply and demand. And the Colombian criminals are probably some of the more astute in the world.
Pablo had 15 airplanes and enough money to bribe every policeman in Colombia. It's easy to see how the more money he made, the more he controlled the police, so the harder he was to arrest. At the peak of his narcotics reign, Escobar made around $145 million in cash each day and $55 billion a year.
Forbes magazine came out with their richest men in the world, and he was right near the top of the list. So right off the bat, you knew that this man was not a millionaire, he was a billionaire.
Every week, the Medellin cartel spent $1,000 on rubber bands, which they would use to wrap the ever-flowing money. Needless to say, all money Escobar made came in cash. Bank transfers weren't exactly an option in the criminal underworld. So in a way, the rubber bands were the first step in hiding the money. You'd have to organize chunks of money that you could easily count. Then you could deposit them more easily. But this was no easy task. Around $2.6 billion were lost just to mice and rats. Pablo Escobar kept most of his money hidden underground, in walls, barrels, and even under his own houses. Then, of course, there's money laundering.
On the outside, it's a nail salon, right? On the inside, it's the best money laundry a growing boy could ask for.
That's the safe way to hide your dirty cash, so to speak. But Pablo didn't do much of it. He had a few high-end restaurants, discos, football pitches, and houses for the poor in Medellin. But these were political moves, more than ways to hide his cash. He wanted to be a popular figure in Colombia, a sort of hero for the masses. Pablo would use most of his money to bribe politicians, the police, and to threaten authorities into submission. In fact, Escobar popularized the term plata o plomo, money or a lead. Do you want money or do you want a bullet? Once he tried to pay off a judge to avoid prosecution. When the judge wouldn't comply, Escobar had the judge and his whole family killed. When the money wasn't used on bribes or stored underground, Pablo made a literal empire for himself and his family.
The ranch had 9 man-made lakes, water slides, life-size dinosaurs made out of fiberglass. We estimate that he easily spent, maybe about $10 million in constructing that ranch.
He had expensive houses in Florida too, and his lavish lifestyle was not a secret. While he was hiding his literal chunks of money, he wasn't hiding the amount he had. His arrogance and his violence eventually brought the end of Pablo Escobar. And with his demise, the true nature of his money caches came to light. As the war between the DEA and the Medellin cartel became Escobar's sole preoccupation, the bloodbaths became more serious and more frequent. In 1991, over 450 policemen were killed in Medellin, and Escobar had put a $700 bounty on every officer. But the DEA was seizing tons of white powder, and they were slowly diminishing his cartel. So in June 1991, Escobar handed himself in. He went to a prison of his own choosing, a fancy palace where he ate chef-made food and played football 24/7. But after he became paranoid that 2 of his lieutenants had stolen money from him, he organized an escape. That's when the DEA started the last great pursuit of Pablo Escobar. So Escobar had all the money in the world, hidden in various pits and barrels, but he was now a man on the run. He couldn't use it to bribe his way out of this. Escobar would sleep in safe houses, but also in the jungles and forests surrounding Medellin. One day in 1992, he was stuck with his family in a tiny shack in the forest. It was freezing cold, and his little daughter was ill. All Pablo had on him was a bag full of cash. That night, he burned $2 million to keep his family warm. Desperate times call for desperate measures, right? By 1993, the DEA had managed to separate Escobar from his family, and he was all on his own. A vigilant group called Los Pepes worked together with the DEA, killing 300 cartel men. As he felt weaker, Escobar became more desperate, making risky phone calls and deals that led the DEA right to him. On a fateful day on December 2nd, 1993, Pablo Escobar was tracked to a house in Medellin. Seeing the DEA agents, Escobar climbed onto its roof, but he was an even easier target there. He was shot and killed. Both Colombian authorities and the DEA agents were over the moon.
Pablo Escobar was killed on that rooftop. The very first message transferred over the radio was, "Viva Colombia! Matamos a Pablo Escobar! Long live Colombia! We've just killed Pablo Escobar."
This was the end of a bloody reign of terror and the end of a notorious cartel. But the same couldn't be said about the money. It's not like they disappeared together with Pablo Escobar. So what happened to all his money after his demise? You might think that Escobar's bag of cash and luxurious estates would have passed on directly to his family after his death, but they were either seized by authorities or stolen from the Escobar family by rival gangs, finally powerful enough to overtake what was left of the Medellin cartel. Escobar's lavish villa did not fare so well either.
Some of the estate was gifted to low-income families. The animals were given to any zoo that would take them, and the villa was left to rot as an insult to the man who'd caused so many deaths.
Whatever money the family did have left, they spent on security, protecting themselves from the numerous attempts on their lives. Once they bought an entire hotel floor, and the Colombian government brought guards to the hallways. But imagine how much a stunt like this costs. They couldn't live like this forever. Slowly, those who survived from Pablo's family integrated into the normal world, trying to make money from legal work and staying out of trouble. So what about the huge chunks of money hidden underground and inside walls? Well, apart from Escobar, no one really knew where the money was hidden. He had dozens of men bury his money in chutes and bunkers, then shoot them so they wouldn't go back and steal it. This is where it gets interesting. To this day, most of Escobar's hidden money remains hidden. The DEA seized as much as they could, but they didn't dig the whole of Colombia looking for piles of cash. But every now and then, there would be a big discovery. In November 1989, someone found 3 barrels underground. They dug them out, and inside, they found 5.3 million wrapped in plastic bags. In 1990, someone dug out 26 million and 150 kilograms of gold bars. Imagine that! Then nothing seemed to happen until 2009, when a farmer found $6 million buried in the jungle. The site wasn't far away from Pablo's famous white powder jungle factories. Also in 2009, someone dug out $10 million from the grounds of Escobar's Hacienda Nápoles ranch. The ranch is now a museum, so it's unclear who found the money. But it wasn't just Escobar's own ranches that harbored enormous sums of money. In 2015, a 65-year-old farmer called Jose Cartalos was digging an irrigation trench. He struck something strange with his shovel. That's when he found a blue plastic container in the ground. As he dug, he realized there was a myriad of them. Jose was living on top of $600 million, and he had no idea. And in 2020, it was Escobar's own nephew, Nicholas, who discovered 18 million hidden in the walls of Pablo's former home. The first thing that shocked him was not the sight, but the smell.
El olor era impresionante, o sea, ese olor es peor que una mortecina multiplicado por 100.
Next to the money was a typewriter, a golden pen, several satellite phones, and a camera with an undeveloped film roll. Needless to say, almost all the money that is dug out and recovered today is given to the Colombian government. The government claims they use Escobar's fortune in social and economic programs. As of 2022, $75 million were found and seized by the Colombian authorities. But not all of the money was handed to the authorities. After Escobar's death, hundreds of people broke into the estate, looting cash, valuables, and breaking the dinosaur statues hoping they were filled with cash. Then, there's Roberto Sendoya. Roberto claims he's Escobar's long-lost son. He was saved from a nasty shootout that killed his mom by an MI6 agent. The agent adopted Roberto and fled to the UK with him to protect him from rival cartels. Roberto only found out about his identity during his 20s. Then, there was another plot twist. Roberto was by the side of his adopted father, the MI6 agent, who was on his deathbed. The agent then handed Roberto a coded note. The note was a map to several of Escobar's treasures. Since then, Roberto has been digging up money or trying to locate more hidden treasures. But it wasn't just peaches and cream from then on. Roberto confessed to the media that he was once kidnapped and tortured for hours by former Medellin rivals. Nicholas Escobar went through a similar ordeal while his uncle was still alive. So maybe don't go digging through the Colombian jungles. Still, most of Escobar's money is still hidden. Isn't this pretty exciting? Hey, thanks for watching. If you like this video, make sure you click on that thumbs up button and subscribe for more. See you next time.